I'm wearing green. Hi, welcome, come on in, and happy St. Patrick's Day. My name is Aoife, and today I'm going to take you through all of the Irish books that are on my shelves, whether they are on my TBR, whether I've already read them, or if I've got them as an ebook. There are quite a lot of books that I need to get through. Why don't we get started? The first book that I'm going to talk about probably doesn't need an introduction. Sally Rooney's Normal People. This book features Connell and Marianne, who go to school together, but that's kind of the only thing that they have in common. Connell is very popular, he's very well liked, everybody in the school knows him, everybody in the school loves him, whereas Marianne is a little bit more of an outsider. But one day the two of them strike up a conversation and they realise that things are about to get interesting. The second book is one of a series, but actually you can read it pretty well as a standalone, because that's what I did, and it reads perfectly as a standalone. It's a really great children's book, so if you guys are stranded at home at the moment and looking for something to read, Laura's Spooky Show by Natasha Vachan-Baird is fantastic. It features three friends who are really interested in amateur dramatics, and they put together a show based around Halloween with a little bit of a spooky vibe, and it's kind of inspired by a haunted house that's in their area. It is, as I said, one of a series, but this works really, really well as a standalone, and each of the characters in it is amazing. The next book that I'm going to talk about is actually coming out in April, and it's a debut novel, it's a fantasy novel, and it's got a female-female romance in it. Sign me the hell up for Queen of Coin and Whispers by Helen Corcoran. It features Zania, who is the queen of her country, and she has just taken over from her corrupt uncle. And it also features Leah, who is her bodyguard, who has been brought in to protect her. And of course, they fall in love. It is fantastic. You're going to really want to read this book. On my TBR, I have got All the Bad Apples by Moira Fowley-Doyle. Moira is half Irish, half French. This book features two sisters, one of who has been cursed, and the other one is starting to get really worried that the curse is coming for her too. I don't really know a whole lot about this book, but anybody that I have seen who has loved it has really, really enjoyed it. So that has spurred me on to pick it up quite a lot. The next book that I'm going to talk about is a sequel, and it is a long-awaited sequel. I think the previous book came out in 2004, 16 years ago by now. It's PostScript by Cecilia Ahern. I really, really loved P.S. I Love You. I think it's one of the first books that I actually properly cried at. PostScript is kind of a continuation of Holly's story after she has kind of come to terms a little bit with Jerry's death. She's moving on a little bit. She's in a new relationship. She's got a new business she's running with her sister. And it's a really, really heartwarming story. It's really, really heart-wrenching. There are actually more stories about other people who have been affected by cancer throughout this story, because there's a support group who came together after having heard about Holly's story and hearing about the letters that Jerry had left for Holly when he was dying. And you are going to need to have tissues when you read this book with you. It is exactly as heartbreaking as P.S. I Love You was. Also on my TBR, but on my Kindle, I have got a copy of Flawed, which is Cecilia Ahern's YA debut. I've also got a copy of Perfect, which is the sequel to that, somewhere. I have no idea where it actually is. I think it's at my parents' house. I do not know a whole lot about this book, but I have the feeling from some things that I've heard from friends, this is a kind of a dystopian novel. If you know what this novel is actually about, please let me know in the comments, because I would really love to hear a bit more about it. The next book that I'm going to talk about is The Anniversary by Roisin Meany. This is a story about Lily and Charlie, who have been married for 26 years but are actually separating at the moment. And Lily is now planning her wedding to her new partner, Tom. So for a last hurrah, they decide to get the whole family together and go back on one last family holiday to a part of the world where they have quite a lot of memories together. And Lily has quite a lot of news to break to her two kids. This is a fantastic book, and I have a feeling that it's one that my mom is really going to enjoy. The next book is also a debut. It is Melanie Murphy's If Only. It's Melanie's fiction debut, and it's about Erin, who's about to turn 30 years old, but that's the age that her mother died at. So She is kind of navigating her 30s without the help of her mother, and it's always in the back of her mind that this is the age that her mother was when she passed away. So she heads back to her grandmother who lives in Ireland, and she finds out a little bit more about her family that way. I haven't actually read this book yet, but it's one that I have been really, really looking forward to. And Melanie actually went to my university, so I have a feeling that this little kind of connection is going to make this a great read for me. You can't see my floor, but it's like 95% book right now. The next book that I'm going to talk about is a thriller, and it is Liz Nugent's Lying in Wait. It's about Lydia, who seems to have the perfect life, but there is just one thing that is always out of her grasp, and she has a feeling that her husband is going to be the one that's going to be able to help her get it. But could her obsession lead to murder? Liz is one of Ireland's greatest thriller writers at the moment, and my current read at the moment is actually her next book, which is coming out at the end of March. It's called Our Little Cruelties, and it features 3 brothers, Luke, Brian and William Drum. At the start of the book, you learn that one of them is dead. You have no idea which one, and the book brings you through their lives. They have a really fractured relationship with each other and a really fractured relationship with their family. If you think that your family is insane, you have not met these people yet. They are crazy. One of my mom's favorite Irish authors, and somebody that I always feel a connection to my mom with when I'm reading their books, is Kathy Kelly. And this is The Year That Changed Everything. It's one of her most recent books. I think it was brought out in 2017 to 2018. I haven't actually read it yet, but I have read quite a lot of Kathy Kelly's other books. I've read, I think, maybe 7 or 8 of them by now. And I really like Kathy's storytelling ways. I really like her writing style. So I have a feeling when I pick this one up, I'm going to really enjoy it as well. One of Ireland's biggest obsession is pennies. You might know it better as Primark, but the company is actually known as Pennies in Ireland, and that's where it was established. Valerie Loftus wrote a little thank you to Pennies, a little love note to one of our biggest stores, if you will, and it is hilarious. It is the perfect love note to the kind of place where you go in just looking to buy a new t-shirt, or you need to get some hair ties, and you come out with €75 worth of everything. Valerie also went to my university. I knew her really well while we were still there, and I am so proud of her for this book. It's fantastic. Another kind of witchy book that is on my TBR still is Perfectly Preventable Deaths by Deirdre Sullivan. I'm actually planning to read this one pretty soon, so I'm going to be able to tell you a little bit more about it in the coming videos. But the publisher of this book is Hotkey Books, and they always give you a little 3-word synopsis at the back of the book. This one is Sisters, Sacrifice, and Witchcraft. That sounds amazing. I'm super in. I've also read quite a lot of Deirdre's previous books before. I have read Needlework, and I have got the Prim and Proper trilogy on my TBR waiting. And now we come to the big gun. Marion. I adore Marion. I would go to battle for the woman. This is Grown Ups. It's her latest release, and it came out at the start of 2020. I've also got 2 of her other books on my Kindle, which is Watermelon, her debut, and Rachel's Holiday, the second book in that series. That is part of the Walsh family series. Each of the 5 Walsh sisters has a book about themselves. So Watermelon is all about Claire, who comes back from the UK pregnant. Her husband has just left her, and she's really trying to struggle to cope with raising the baby by herself. And Rachel's Holiday is, by the title, about Rachel, who has lived in New York for a really long time and is struggling with addiction, and is signed by her parents into the Cloisters, which is a kind of a rehab area in, I believe, Wicklow somewhere. And that book is amazing. It really, really goes through the ups and downs of being in rehab with an addiction, and the characters in it are all fantastic. It's one of my favorite of Marion's books. I'm really hoping this is going to be up here too. If the world of social media kind of gets you down, then Filter This by Sophie White is the book that you really need. It features Ali, who is an influencer, and she has kind of imagined a pregnancy for herself, and it's getting completely out of control. And a secondary character in this book is Shelley, who's also an influencer, but from a different area of Ireland. Shelley is trying to keep the perfect image of her life that she puts on Instagram into her actual everyday life. This book is fantastic, and I cannot wait for the sequel. I think that's coming out in mid to late 2020. I cannot wait for it. This next book is actually, it's got a pretty sad story behind it, and there is a good reason why I've been keeping it on my shelf for such a long time without having read it. It's The Gift of Friends by Emma Hannigan. Emma had breast cancer and passed away from the disease, unfortunately. This is the last book that she ever wrote, that she ever published, and I've also got her second last book, which is Letters to My Daughter, on my Kindle. I don't know if I'm going to be able to get through either of those two books without crying. So I have decided to keep them on my TBR until I'm a little bit more emotionally ready to say goodbye. The last book that I'm going to talk about today is Last Ones Left Alive by Sarah Davis Goff. This is a kind of a YA thriller fantasy book. It's set on Slonbeg, a fictional island off the west coast of Ireland, and it features Orpin and her mother Maeve. There is a torment in Ireland called the Scrake, and Maeve has been bitten by it, and Orpin is now trying to find a cure for her mother so that she can stay around in her life for a little bit longer. I haven't read this book yet, unfortunately, but I have been really looking forward to it. Those are all the books by Irish authors that I have got on my physical TBR and some of the books that I've got on my Kindle. What books by Irish authors have you got that you can read this March? Don't forget to like and subscribe. I'll have new videos every week. Now get on out of here.